September 1943. Somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. 14 men are paddling silently through pitch-black water. No engines. No radio. No backup. 3,000 kilometers behind enemy lines. Ahead of them, one of the most heavily defended Japanese harbors in Southeast Asia. Their weapons? Magnetic limpet mines attached to wooden canoe paddles. Their orders? Sink as many ships as possible. Then get out alive. This is Operation Jaywick, the most audacious commando raid of the entire Second World War. And almost nobody has ever heard of it. It's early 1943, and the war in the Pacific is going badly for the Allies. Japan has moved fast. Devastatingly fast. In just 18 months, they've seized the Philippines, Hong Kong, Malaya, Burma, the Dutch East Indies, and Singapore, the greatest British military fortress in Asia, fallen in just 1 week. But the real strategic prize isn't any of those places. It's Singapore Harbor. Because Singapore is where the Japanese supply chain lives. Every tank, every bullet, every barrel of fuel headed to Japanese forces across Southeast Asia passes through those docks. Japanese cargo ships fill the harbor day and night, sailing in and out with near total impunity. The Allies know that if they could disrupt that supply chain, even temporarily, the effects could ripple across the entire theater of war. The problem? Singapore is 550 kilometers from the nearest Allied territory. It's surrounded by Japanese-controlled islands, Japanese patrol boats, and a Japanese garrison of tens of thousands of soldiers. Any conventional attack by air or sea would be detected and destroyed long before it reached the harbor. Singapore, for all practical purposes, is untouchable. Which is exactly when Major Ivan Lyon walks into the room. Ivan Lyon is not the kind of man you forget. He's 27 years old, quietly intense, with a fluency in multiple languages and an almost pathological calm under pressure. He'd already escaped Singapore while it was falling, navigating a small boat through hundreds of miles of Japanese-occupied waters with his wife and infant son on board. He knows those waters. He knows how the Japanese patrol them. And he has an idea that his superior officers will almost certainly dismiss as suicidal. His plan: don't attack Singapore from the outside. Sneak inside the Japanese perimeter disguised as locals. Not with a warship. Not with bombers. With a beat-up fishing vessel that looks like it belongs there. Then, at night, small teams in collapsible canoes paddle silently into the harbor. They attach limpet mines to the hulls of Japanese ships. They paddle away. The mines detonate on timers. And by the time anyone knows what happened, the raiders are long gone. The British military establishment hears this plan and does exactly what you'd expect. They say no. Too few men. Too little firepower. Too deep inside enemy territory. No realistic extraction route. The chance of survival, let alone success, is essentially zero. But Lyon doesn't give up. He takes his plan to the Z Special Unit, a covert operations division created specifically to do the things conventional military commanders refuse to consider. And he finds exactly the audience he needs. They say yes. Lyon now has to find the right men. Not soldiers. Not in the conventional sense. What he needs are men who can sail, paddle, swim, navigate by stars, stay invisible for weeks on end, and who are, frankly, comfortable with the very real possibility that they won't come back. He assembles 14 men, most of them Australian, some British. They train intensively in the waters off the coast of Australia. Night paddling. Mine placement. Silent infiltration. Survival. They study Japanese patrol patterns, shipping routes, harbor layouts obsessively. Every detail is rehearsed until it becomes reflex, because out there, hesitation is death. Then Lyon finds his ship. The MV Krite. It's a 21-meter Japanese fishing vessel. Small, weathered, smelling of fish oil, with a worn-down diesel engine that tops out at 6 knots. It looks like exactly the kind of unremarkable boat that fills every harbor from Malaya to the Philippines. Which is precisely the point. They paint it in local colors. They equip it with fake cargo. The crew practices moving and dressing like local fishermen. Lyon even considers dyeing their skin to reduce their Western appearance, a measure of how seriously they're planning every single detail. On July 11, 1943, the Krite quietly slips out of Exmouth Gulf in Western Australia. No fanfare. No official send-off. Almost nobody outside of Z Special Unit even knows they've left. What follows is 3 weeks of what can only be described as controlled psychological torture. The Kite travels north through the waters of the Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, covering nearly 3,000 kilometers through ocean that Japan effectively owns. Every single day brings new risks. They sail past Japanese patrol vessels, close enough to see sailors on deck. They pass through straits crowded with enemy shipping. They anchor near islands with Japanese garrisons and lie perfectly still in the dark, listening to activity on shore just a few hundred meters away. The tension doesn't peak and release. It simply accumulates, day after day, with nowhere to go. The rules are absolute. No radio transmissions. No unnecessary movement on deck. If approached by a Japanese vessel, they play the role of local fishermen. And if that doesn't work, they fight, knowing that fighting will almost certainly mean dying. Every man on that boat understands the arithmetic. There is no version of this mission where help arrives. There is no cavalry. There is only the Kite, the ocean, and the decision they all made before they left. There's a moment the veterans will talk about years later. Somewhere in the Lombok Strait, one of the most strategically important and therefore most heavily patrolled choke points in the entire region. Japanese aircraft pass overhead. A patrol boat moves across their path. Close. Too close. The Kite holds course. Changes nothing. Looks like nothing. And the Japanese sail on. Lyon notes it in his log almost without comment. They keep moving north. There's no celebrating. No relief that lasts longer than a breath. Because the next patrol boat is always out there somewhere, and the mission isn't over. It hasn't even started yet. By early September, they've reached the Riau Archipelago, a cluster of small islands just south of Singapore. This is where the Kite will wait, hidden among the islands, engines off, crew below deck during daylight hours, invisible against the coastline. And this is where the real operation begins. On the night of September 20th, 1943, 3 canoes slip silently off the side of the vessel into black water. The crew calls them fullboats, collapsible kayaks, roughly 5 meters long, built from rubberized canvas stretched over a wooden frame. Each one carries 2 men and a kit of limpet mines. 16 mines total across 3 teams. Each mine contains enough plastic explosive to hole a ship below the waterline. They're magnetic. You press them against a metal hull, set the timer fuse, and paddle away. The plan is simple in concept. Terrifying in execution. The 3 teams have been assigned separate targets spread across different parts of Singapore Harbor. They'll paddle independently through the night, plant their mines, and rendezvous back with the Kite at a predetermined point days later, if everything goes right. There is no plan B. If anyone is captured, the Kite must leave without them. That was agreed before they ever left Australia. Every man understood it. Every man accepted it. The teams separate. The Kite disappears back into the darkness. 6 men in 3 canvas canoes, paddling alone through the night toward the most heavily defended harbor in Southeast Asia, with nothing but darkness and silence keeping them alive. What happens over the next several hours is documented history that reads like fiction. Lyon's team navigates the outer harbor channels using the darkness and the natural confusion of a busy working port as cover. Ships moving. Lights on docks. The constant background noise of a facility that never fully sleeps. All of it working in their favor, masking the almost imperceptible sound of 2 paddles dipping and pulling through black water. They move between vessels. They identify targets. Large cargo ships. Tankers. Supply vessels. The kind of tonnage that will hurt when it goes down. One by one, they slide beneath the surface and press the limpet mines against steel hulls. The magnetic clang, muffled by dark water, sounds impossibly loud in the silence. They hold still. Listen. Nothing. The fuse timers are set. Then, just as quietly as they arrived, they paddle back out through the harbor mouth. No alarms. No searchlights. No shots fired. The Japanese have no idea they were there. 6 men paddle back out into the open ocean, leaving behind 16 ticking mines pressed against the hulls of 7 Japanese ships, and the harbor behind them looks exactly as it did before they arrived. Calm. Busy. Completely unaware. Dawn breaks over Singapore Harbor. The crews of the Japanese vessels go about their morning routines. Sailors eat breakfast. Dock workers begin their shifts. The harbor, as always, is busy. And then, starting just after first light, the mines begin to go off. 7 ships are hit. 7, in a single morning. The harbor erupts into chaos. Explosions tear through the hulls of cargo and supply vessels. Ships begin to list and take on water. The Japanese response is immediate and furious, but completely directionless, because nobody has any idea where the attack came from. Was it a submarine? An aircraft they didn't detect? Saboteurs already inside the garrison? The Japanese military launches an extensive investigation that consumes significant resources and attention for weeks. They never reach the correct answer. The total tonnage sunk, approximately 37,000 tons of Japanese shipping. In a single night's work, 14 men in a fishing boat and 3 folding canvas canoes have inflicted damage on the Japanese supply chain that a fleet of bombers might have struggled to equal. Now comes the part of the plan that Lion never fully solved on paper. Getting out. The canoe teams have to paddle back through enemy waters to a rendezvous point that exists only as a set of coordinates. No landmarks. No signals. No guarantee the Krite is still there. The Krite itself has to navigate those same thousands of kilometers of Japanese-controlled ocean, now on a much higher state of alert, because something has just devastated Singapore harbor and the entire Japanese military wants to know what. The Japanese are looking hard. And they are looking everywhere. For the canoe teams, the return journey means days of paddling, hiding in mangroves during daylight hours, navigating by night, constantly aware that a single patrol boat passing at the wrong moment ends everything. No rescue is possible. No extraction plan exists beyond the Krite. If they miss the rendezvous, they are on their own, deep inside enemy territory, with no way home and no one coming for them. The margin for error is not small. It is non-existent. And yet, one by one, all 3 full boat teams reach the rendezvous point. All 6 canoe operators are alive and accounted for. They climb back onto the Krite, and the Krite turns south. The return voyage takes another 3 weeks. If anything, it's more nerve-wracking than the outbound trip. Now every Japanese naval asset in the region is operating at heightened readiness. Nobody knows why Singapore was attacked. Nobody knows who did it or how. But everyone is watching the water with a new kind of attention, a sharper, angrier attention, born from the humiliation of having their most important harbor attacked without warning and without explanation. The Krite moves through it all exactly as before. Slow. Unremarkable. A fishing vessel going nowhere in particular. Past patrol boats. Past aircraft. Past the same straits and choke points that had nearly ended the mission on the way in. Each day is the same performance. Each night is the same silence. Each nautical mile south is 1 mile closer to something that is beginning to feel impossible: survival. On October 19, 1943, 47 days after it left, the Krite sails back into Exmouth Gulf in Western Australia. All 14 men are alive. Every single one of them. There are no words in the official record that adequately capture what that moment felt like. The reports are clinical, precise, military in their restraint. But those 14 men had spent 47 days inside the belly of an enemy empire, had struck at its heart, and had walked back out the other side without losing a single person. That doesn't happen. Except that it did. The British and Australian authorities classify the operation immediately and completely. No press reports. No public medal ceremony. The men are debriefed and told, essentially, to say nothing to anyone. The reason is both practical and cold. Lion is already planning the follow-up. Operation Remo, bigger, more ambitious, targeting Singapore harbor again. If the Japanese learn how Jaywick was conducted, the methods are burned forever. Silence protects the next mission. So the men who pulled off one of the most extraordinary feats of the entire war go home quietly, without acknowledgement, without celebration, carrying a secret they cannot share. Operation Remo launches in 1944. It does not end well. Lion and most of the Remo raiders are killed or captured and subsequently executed by the Japanese before the war ends. It is a different story, and a darker one, and it belongs to a different video. But it casts a long shadow over Jaywick, a reminder that the ocean these men sailed was never truly survivable, only navigable, and that fortune had chosen to look away at exactly the right moments in September and October of 1943. What Jaywick represents, what military historians still study and special operations doctrines still reference 80 years later, is proof of a principle that sounds deceptively simple and is extraordinarily difficult to execute in practice. Complexity does not equal effectiveness. 14 men in a fishing boat achieved what a task force couldn't. Not because they had better weapons or more firepower. Because they were willing to disappear completely, to become invisible, and strike from inside a place the enemy believed was permanently, absolutely safe. They understood something that military planners with maps and budgets often miss: the most dangerous weapon in any operation is the one the enemy doesn't know to look for. The Krite itself survives the war. You can see it today at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney. The same battered hull. The same worn timber deck. The same vessel that slipped through thousands of kilometers of enemy-controlled ocean without once being recognized for what it was. It sits there now in a museum, behind barriers and informational placards, looking exactly as unremarkable as it always did. A fishing boat. Nothing special. Nothing worth a second glance. The most dangerous ship in the Pacific, disguised as the most forgettable one. If you ever find yourself standing in front of it, take a moment. Because that boat went somewhere that should have been impossible to reach, did something that should have been impossible to survive, and came back with every man it carried. And the world never really knew. Operation Jaywick was never supposed to work. On paper it was reckless. Too few men. Too little firepower. Too deep inside enemy territory with no meaningful extraction plan and no margin for error of any kind. But 14 men believed it could work. And they were right. If you've made it this far, drop a comment. What do you think was the most daring moment of the entire operation? The 3-week voyage in through waters the Japanese controlled completely? The night in the harbor with nothing but canvas canoes and magnetic mines? Or the 47-day journey home through an ocean that was actively hunting for them? The answer's probably different for everyone. And if this kind of deep dive military history is what you're here for, you know where to find the rest of it.